Welcome to Brown Bag History for February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And today we're talking about winter carnivals. As we start, we acknowledge that the land around Revelstoke and on the Columbia River and its tributaries is the Snacks homeland and traditional territory. We acknowledge the ties of the Secwepemc, the Okanagan Nation Alliance Silks, and the Ktunaxa to this land. We acknowledge our use and inhabitation of this land sacred to these four nations. We respectfully honor their traditions and culture. So I was inspired to do this talk by Ali, who is organizing the Winter Carnival for Revelstoke's 125th anniversary of incorporation. It seemed like a really great idea to revive this long tradition in our community. And so it made me want to do some research into the history of carnivals in Revelstoke. So they go back to 1915. We actually have this ribbon from the first Winter Sports Carnival in February of 1915. So in the fall of 1914, there was a growing population of settlers from Norway and Sweden. A lot of them were settling in the Big Bend area, and included the Gunnarsson and Nelson families and quite a few others. And the big sport in Norway was ski jumping. So the settlers wanted to start a competitive ski club. There had been ski clubs here, sort of informal recreational clubs going back to 1891, but the 1914 club was the formal Revelstoke Ski Club, and they had their first meeting on December 12th, 1914, with 23 members. And a man named Sigurd Halvorsen was the president. So the first thing they did was say, we're going to hold a winter carnival February 8th and 9th. So they had just less than 2 months to pull this off. But by February of 1915, when they held the first carnival, the membership in the club was up to 192 from a beginning of 23 members. So people got on board really quickly, got really excited about the project. And one of the things they decided to do, I don't know who came up with this idea, but it was quite brilliant. They decided to erect a 40-foot tall snowman at the station. And, this obviously isn't your typical Frosty the Snowman type. It was a carved snowman. There had been a man in town named F. Tweedale, who was a skilled wood carver. He used to win carving prizes at the fall fairs. And he had moved to Salmon Arm, so they persuaded him to come back to town to carve the snowman. And they put it up near the station, and they named it the Snow King. And they actually have, you can see it actually is holding an electric torch, and that was wired, so the torch lit up. It was pretty amazing. So when they dedicated it on Saturday, February 6th, and the mayor at the time, Mayor William Anderson Foote, unveiled the statue, and he gave a very long-winded speech, the entirety of which was reprinted in the newspaper. And he called it the Snow King of the Mountains, and referred to him as the winter blessing of Canada, representing water and the vigor and health and joy of our Canadian people, old and young. And after the unveiling, they did a couple of things that you wouldn't see happen nowadays. They got all the schoolboys to have a giant snowball fight, and then they handed out peanuts and candy. They, as part of the carnival, as well as skiing events, they had an ice skating carnival. It was held at the YMCA outdoor rink on Monday, February 8th. And at that point, there was no indoor rink. There had been one where Coal River Manor is now. It was built in 1899 and burned down in 1912. It wasn't replaced until the 1940s, and then was the local rink for many years. But they had the carnival there. So this was located, you can see the CPR buildings in the background and the hotel up on on the hill. This would be located about where the dance studio is and Victoria Road. That was the YMCA playing field at the time. They had the city band providing music for the skaters. And the skaters were all dressed in costumes. They did it as a masquerade. So the onlookers numbered in the thousands. The next day, the skaters gathered at the rink again, and moving pictures were taken. I don't know whether the moving pictures still exist anywhere, but they did mention that there was somebody doing film work at the festival that year. The prizes were awarded for the best dressed women, men, couples, boys, and girls. And they had a best comic prize for 3 men, Jack McCarty, F. Fleming, and Dick Lawrence, who were dressed as a team as an elephant. And I'd love to see pictures of that. They also held skiing and snowshoe events on Tuesday, February 9th. And the ski runs were held on the base of Mount Revelstoke on the hill behind the hospital where the Alpine Mall is now. They had an 8-mile distance race that started up in the morning, went through Lower Town, under the railway bridge, up to Maylee's Farm, which is near where the Fellowship Baptist Church is now, and back to town. The winner was a man named Engvald Engen of Phoenix, which was near where Grand Forks is now. And he was actually well-known skier in the interior. At that time, he was the ski jumping champion of Canada. And for his win, he was presented with a silver trophy from the Revelstoke Wine and Spirit Company. And local skier Nels Nelson came in second in the race. And they said the race was very close. They said there was just seconds between the 10 competitors. In the afternoon, they had a parade of skiers and snowshoers going from the Scandinavian Hall on 2nd Street West and headed up to the mountain. The parade was led by the Mayor Foote, followed by 100 members of the Snowshoe Club and members of the Revelstoke Ski Club. And again, the parade was filmed, but unfortunately, we don't have that footage anywhere. They had a boys ski jump event take place for boys under 16. Tom Maylee won first prize, followed by Nils Nelson's younger brother, Ivan. Whereas the most anticipated event was the men's ski jumping contest for the Championship of British Columbia. Engvald Engen, the Canadian champion, and local boy Nils Nelson were the favorites with the spectators, and they didn't disappoint. Nils Nelson won the contest with a distance of 99 feet, followed by Engen. And Nelson was presented by this trophy. It was donated by the CB Human Company General Store. And this is on loan from the Nelson family. But it antler handles. It just really absolutely gorgeous trophy. And that was with that jump, he won the Championship of British Columbia. And of course, he went on to become the Canadian champion and then finally world champion. They also had a beginner's downhill race, and it said it was the source of much merriment. And also at a ladies' race, and with Mrs. Halverson coming in first, and mention of 8-year-old Isabel Corsier getting an honorable mention. So there's the beginning of her ski career in 1915 as an 8-year-old. This is a later race. This is from 1921, but they did have a ladies' open ski race. And Mrs. Gunnarsson, who's on the left in that photograph, wearing number 1, was the winner of the race. She was a noted ski racer in BC and Alberta. She consistently won the races. There was even one story where she let the teenage boys, she was racing against them and let them get a head start, and she still beat every one of them. And of course, her whole family, her husband was a ski maker, and their 4 sons were all noted skiers as well. And Elise and Rebecca Nelson there as well, who are sisters of Nels Nelson. Later that evening, they had a dance in Masonic Hall, which is right across the street where Trail Tire is now. And so the hall was decorated with crossed skis, snowshoes, and draped with red, white, and blue bunting and the British ensign. Below the gallery was a large sign on a red background with large white lettering reading "Welcome." And they had the city band there providing the music with 12 musicians. And they had a dinner and awarding of the prizes for the event. One of the people who had come for the event was a man named Thorleif Iverson, who was the president of the National Ski Association of Canada. And he'd come to watch the events, and he spoke to the Board of Trade. And he praised the Revelstoke Ski Club for the manner in which they'd organized the event and encouraged them to continue to promote skiing and to hold annual competitions, which they did. So the next one was held in 1916. And for the first jumping events, they were held just outside the boundaries of the park. Mount Revelstoke National Park had been formed in 1914. And so for the first year, they did it in such a big hurry, they weren't able to arrange to have any events inside the park. But during the course of the year, they met with Parks Canada officials and they got permission to create the jump within the park. And it's basically the jump that's still there now, on Mount Revelstoke National Park, where they've revised as an interpretive site. So that was they worked, they created, they built up the outrun there with rocks, and sort of created the jump, and that was the jump, the major jump in Revelstoke until the early 1970s. As you can see, they also had the 7-mile race in 1916. And the man on the right, the skier on the right, 2A, was a skier from Camrose, Alberta, and he won the race that year. The 2A, 1B and 2B, the two boys there, they were twins, Leonard and Tom Maley, and they were participating in the men B race, or the long distance race. So this is Nels Nelson in 1916 when he takes the Canadian Ski Championship and wins a cup called the Nabob Cup. And we have that one on display as well here in the museum. So that was really what made Revelstoke sort of the ski champion, or really put Revelstoke on the map in terms of skiing. We have a New York magazine article from the 1920s that talks about Revelstoke as sort of the capital of ski jumping in North America. And there's a little note there saying that, that the children went from the cradle to skis back then. So it was really becoming sort of the place to come for ski jumping in North America. And by 1925, Nels Nelson had become the world champion and held that record for several years. Another event that they brought into the lineup was ski joring. And this is the ski joring race right on Mackenzie Avenue in 1922. You recognize the block between 1st and 2nd Street. And that is Isabel Corsier on the left. She was just a month shy of her 16th birthday. That's the year that she took the world's women's ski jumping championship with a jump of 88 feet, and also won the ski joring competition. So she was definitely an extreme athlete before anybody had heard of the term extreme athletes. They had really lovely prizes for the carnivals. This is the window of a man named J.H. Monroe, who was a fur buyer and seller, and he has all the prizes on display in his shop window. For 1 year, I believe it was 1926, he put up a car as a prize. And he said if anybody could beat Nils Nelson's record, he would award them the car. I think he probably breathed a sigh of relief when nobody beat Nils Nelson's record, so he didn't have to award the car, but he was willing to put that up. And that was just a really way to promote international or world skiers to come here. At that time, it was really just American and Canadian jumpers who were coming, but they were certainly trying to encourage people to come. And I don't have any pictures of it here, but in 1931, there was an event that was referred to as the Great Fiasco. And that was when they were having a Canadian event here, and they'd invited skiers from Ontario to come. And the Ontario jumpers and judges saw the hill, and they said, this is absolutely not safe. We're not going to let our jumpers jump off that hill. And of course, the locals were outraged. And Bob Limburn, who was, I think he was the world champion or just about to become the world champion, and certainly getting close to that status, did several jumps off the hill just to say, and he was sort of jumping saying, see, it's fine, it's fine. And of course, everybody was cheering Bob Limburn. And they the judges finally said that the Class A event jumpers would jump off the B jump, because they said it was safer than the A jump, and said it wasn't safe enough. And the local committee said, well, we're not awarding any prizes, because they didn't jump off this wasn't a proper race. They didn't jump off the A jump, so nobody was getting any prizes from this. So it was a big controversy, and it was actually referred to as the Great Fiasco of 1931. But the jumping continued for many years after that. There was a hiatus during the war when there was only sort of boys' events that were happening. But 1949, they had an international tournament, which was mostly American and Canadian jumpers from across the country. But they were trying to bring back international events or major events on the hill. And that's what they wanted, to make it truly international. They wanted to get jumpers from all across Europe coming here. So in 1950, they did the first event that they called the Tournament of Champions. And that year it was mostly jumpers from Norway. In fact, the whole Norwegian team came for the 1950 event, and really sort of excited the locals. There was also a note in the paper telling parents to make sure they knew where their teenage daughters were while the Norwegians were in town. As it turned out, one of them actually did end up marrying a local girl for a short period of time. But that really sort of spurred the club on to make the Tournament of Champions bigger and better. And over the course of several years, they continued the event, and they had jumpers from all over Europe and from Japan and the United States and Canada coming here. They had several major events. They had some Canadian Championship events here. They had Olympic trials here at one point. So it just became a huge event for the whole community, and everybody was involved in it in some way. They'd get the boys out of high school to get them to come up and pack the jump down as well. So just everybody was involved in some way, and they would have events like dances, cultural events. So they'd usually try to have entertainment related to the countries of the people who were coming. So they had people from representing like different countries. People from Norway and Sweden who lived locally were doing entertainment. The Japanese Canadian Society would get involved in that as well. There was one event in the in the late 50s or early 60s when the Japanese jumper who was a champion in Japan came here, and he didn't speak a word of English, But during the entertainment, he got up and sang an Elvis Presley song in perfect English. He'd spent days memorizing the song. So it became a huge event for the whole community and beyond as well. There was people coming from all over the place to watch the events, and the CPR would actually put sleeper cars along the track for people, visitors to stay. They would ask for billets from local families. So it's just a huge community event. There's a picture of the jump in the late 1950s. The local media, the BC TV would usually come as well and film. CBC came some years to film and to record. Those, you can see the sea of knitted sweaters in the crowd there too, the time when those were popular. They did have other events, slalom. This was a slalom run about 1939. They had runs sort of east of the ski jump area. There's a patch from the Revelstoke Ski Club Tournament of Champions. And the local people who were involved with it, after it was all over, everybody put in so much work doing these. So to have a little bit of fun afterwards, they started doing what they called the Tournament of Chumps. And it was sort of a local event. And they did some interesting trick skiing as well. So some early, what you'd call freestyle. They were actually doing freestyle back in the 50s. And it was obviously involved cross-dressing as well. So early drag in Revelstoke. They started doing part of the event was the crowning of the Snow Queen, and the first Snow Queen was back in the 1920s, and that's something that they continued every year to have a contest for the Snow Queen. And this is I think 1958 when a local man named John Tokios was asked to carve a bear throne for the Snow Queen. So that was where the crowning took place that year. And that really sort of brought out a lot of encouragement to do ice sculpture as well as snow sculpture. So this is a snow cat, apparently, about 1958. And then the Doki Lodge, their mascot was a tiger. So they would do a snow tiger each year. Oh, that's a pretty impressive looking tiger. And this would be just next to Grizzly Plaza. So that's the parking lot in between Grizzly Plaza and City Furniture. But rather impressive looking. It would have taken a lot of snow to do that one. So this is the 1959 Winter Carnival program. And some of the events that they were holding, you can see the date on this, it's March 4th to March 8th. So a lot of them were held in March, either February or March, but quite often like the Tournament of Champions was held in early March. And they had a bingo, something called a jamboree on ice, a get acquainted event and dance. Of course, the Tournament of Champions, there's a competitor's ribbon, a big parade, the crowning of the Queen, square dancing, and supper with Highland dancing, and a hockey tournament as well. So it was broadening out to beyond just the Tournament of Champions jumping. There's some photographs from the 1960 Tournament of Champions. And you can see they built quite an elaborate stage for this one. And with a backdrop, said Revelstoke Ski Club presents Tournament of Champions 1960. And the Queen, who's standing there, is Faye McDonnell, who later Faye Jones. And the princesses are Greta Hansen, Greta Spearbrecker, and Barbara Carlson. And I don't know what if she had a Grail? Okay, thanks. And of course, there is Mayor Walter Hardman, and the previous Snow Queen, who's Anita Carenti. Yeah, yeah. And that is Dr. Hugh Mackay, who is the president of the ski club. And there's Faye with Dr. Mackay. There's lovely pictures, and I absolutely adore their sweaters. There's a great picture of Faye and Ray Spearbrecker and Greta Hansen, who became Spearbrecker. And these are two skiers from Quebec. I do have their names, Charlande, and I can't remember the other one, but they were actually doing trying to do qualifying for Olympics at the time. That was part of their run to get to the Olympics. But the beautiful picture of the hill as well. Those pictures came from Greta. So things continued on, and again, in 1961, they held the Canadian Nordic Championships here with a Class A cross-country races, 30-kilometer cross-country race and 15 kilometers cross-country. They did the 60-meter and 80-meter jumps on Mount Revelstoke jump. That was at that point it was called the Nels Nelson Hill. And then again, 1962, they did the similar events. In 1967, that was the first year they actually started calling it the Revelstoke Snow Festival. And a new organization had formed called the Revelstoke Snow Festival Association. And they took it on to make sure that other events were held and organized, as well as just the Tournament of Champions. John Renault was the first chairman of the Snow Festival Association, and they said their intention was to build the Snow Cities Festival into one of the major winter celebrations in Canada. It was sponsored by the Kinsman Club. By that year, the Tournament of Champions was expected to bring in jumpers from Japan, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and other European countries as well. They had a bingo sponsored by the Doki Lodge in Knights of Pythias Hall. They had three dances: an Alpine Ball, a Mardi Gras Masquerade Ball, and a Teen Hop. There was a minor hockey tournament and hockey clinics, and a father and son hockey breakfast. The fun on ice event at the arena. The arena or forum was built by them. They had novelty races on Mackenzie Avenue. This is a little ad from the little newspaper that was printed locally called the Little Echo. They had snowshoe, shorty ski races. They had a light up of business and residential places with prizes awarded for best light show, the pancake breakfast. And the ski events that year were the North American, Nordic, and Centennial Jumping Championships. The star attraction that year was Kjell Sjöberg, who was the Olympic bronze medalist from Sweden at the 1964 Olympics. And at the 1967 event, he made the hill record of 310 feet and a total score of 225.5 points. It was estimated that were more than 4,000 people on the hill for that event. So in 19 seems to be okay. Yeah, they also had that year they had a 37 passenger bus leaving from the co-op parking lot every half hour with free transportation to the hill. They had free skiing, and free access to the lifts on the downhill slopes on Mount Revelstoke. The volunteer fire brigade was doing a gigantic Christmas tree fire. They said they had over 500 trees that people had brought in, and they brought them near the 4 Mile Lookout on Mount Revelstoke, which is near the top terminal of the Pomelift, and set them on fire on the opening night, Friday, March 3rd. Again, something that you would not be allowed to do now. And something else you wouldn't get away with, snowmobile races on Revelstoke Golf Course. They had a day-long duplicate bridge tournament. So there really was something for everybody there. They had a wine and cheese tasting party at the Selkirk Hall, hosted by the Knights of Columbus. And they brought in Cap Capozzi of Kelowna Wines from Kelowna, who had lived in Revelstoke before moving to Kelowna and starting up the whole Capozzi enterprises, which included Kelowna Wines and the Capri Mall and that whole business empire. There was a basketball game between the RCMP and the Big R radio station, several dinners, including spaghetti dinners, business and residential light-up contests, bowling marathon. The Snow Queen that year was Margaret Meehan. Ken's sister Patty was also in the contest that year, but didn't win, much to the disgust of her mother, who thought she should have won. They had the opening ceremonies at the Ice Palace on Mackenzie Avenue. Their mascot that year was the snowman, which you can see in the illustrations here. They were hoping to have contests to name him, but I never did find out whether he got a name or not. Said that CHBC TV was coming to film and was doing some pre-interviews, and they were going to be promoting it during the week. So it was became a really big event, and it continued for many years. By 1973, the Tournament of Champions was no longer in effect, but that year the BC Snowmobile Championships were taking place, and they were the anchor event for the Snow Festival in 1973. They had a big Snow Festival breakfast at First and Mackenzie, big parade, a kids' novelty day, cheese tasting party, Selkirk hockey game. The Selkirks were the name of the local team at the time. The big cabaret, curling events, ice and snow sculpture contest, a snowshoe golf tournament at the golf course. And they did have a tournament of chumps skiing on Mount Mackenzie. Mount Mackenzie had been established in 1963, so it was sort of the premier ski hill by then. They also had a Bavarian ski party at Mount Mackenzie. They had a figure skating show in the Forum by the Figure Skating Club, an old-time fiddlers show and dance, mixed novelty, curling bonspiels. The RSS High School did a band concert and a drama production. They did the Christmas tree burning on the old hospital site that year, which is where Alpine Village Mall is now. The hospital had been torn down by then. They had a torchlight parade, the Miss Revelstoke pageant, the adult dances for the high school and for adults. And then, of course, the BC Snowmobile Championships and dance. These are some photographs from the 1973 program, where it shows the members of the club building their track, which was in the industrial park area. So there's the creation of the track. So that's where they had the snowmobile races that year. So they continued with the annual events. The 1976 was the first appearance of what was known as the snow worm. And I'm not entirely sure who came up with that, but I kind of suspect Margaret McMahon, because she wrote a song about snow worm. And not sure who did the drawing. The faces, I'd say, bordering on creepy. And this was a napkin with a poem about a snow worm, the Revelstoke snow worm. If you look closely as you drive by, you'll see a worm with bright blue eyes. He lives and grows in the whitest snow. He cannot wriggle, for it's cold, you know. The shimmering mountain, white with sun, turns blue when day is done. The worm lives there, and there's only one. He watches for you, but he's very small. Some will say he's not there at all. If you keep looking into the blue, you may not see him, but he will see you. Also creepy. But anyway, the snow worm hung around for quite some time. 1976 was also the introduction of the outhouse races, and wasn't able to find out why anybody came up with that idea. Apparently it was starting to take off in other places, like in Washington State and in Minnesota and other places where they have lots of snow. But Mike Rooney was one of the organizers of the event. They actually ended up with 40 entries the first year. And in the 1977 program, that's where this photograph came from, there was a little description of the race. It said the first heat and the machines were lined up, the starting gun poised, countdown in progress, racing crews tense, 2 pulling, keeping ropes taut, 2 pushing, muscles in knots, and 1 inside, sitting petrified. The countdown reached 0 and the starting gun jammed. Someone yelled bang and the race was underway. The first machine collapsed right on the spot, and from the midst of that tangled mess, arms, legs, ropes, boards, skis, came 3 more outhouses, and they shot down the track, slipping and sliding, dodging spectators all the way. And that's how it went the rest of the day. And when all was said and done, we found that the RCMP had won. The McMahon Cup was theirs, and the other 40 outhouses would have to wait their crews planning for the Great Race 77. Said there were also entries from Mica Creek and from Sicamous. And the McMahon Cup was presented by Margaret McMahon, who was a city councillor at the time. And the other thing that they had, and I had to look up what this was, but they did smoosh races. This was the introduction of smoosh races. So they had 4 participants strap themselves onto 2x4s and attempt to travel 25 yards, swing around a barrel, and be the first team to make it back to the start line. So that was probably a lot of fun too. I imagine there were a lot of falls on that one, but I haven't seen more of a description of that. You'll notice that several of these men are wearing kind of alpine style hats, and they were green. So this was the ad in January 28th, 1976. Celebrate Snow Festival Week with a Tyrolean hat. These hats have been accepted by the Revelstoke Chamber of Commerce as the official Revelstoke Alpine hat and will be used for all Revelstoke City civic celebrations. Calgary has the white Stetson. Let's have Revelstoke have its Tyrolean hat. And the hats were available at several local businesses for $1.49 each. Another event that they had in 1976 was the Cubs and Scouts sponsoring an ice stampede at the Forum. So they had chuck wagon races, toboggan races, flying saucer races, Pony Express races, obstacle races, tug of war, and other events. And then the figure skating club was going to be doing a review as well. Some of the, so 1977, we also have the program. Again, they had the snow worm as their mascot. They had the Boy Scouts doing their ice stampede again, an opening party at Mount Mackenzie Ski Lodge. Again, the BC Snowmobile Championship races were held that year, and a snowmobile club put on a big dance. They had a multicultural talent night, what they called the World's Broomball Championship. That takes place on Tuesday, February 15th at the Forum, with teams from all parts of the great country competed for the coveted Silver Broom Trophy. After the game, crowning of the Broomball Queen, and again, it's drag. They had a pie in the face contest, a Klondike night, the Miss Revelstoke Queen pageant, senior citizens bingo, a Kinsman casino dance, a snow sculpture. It said this year, because of a lack of snow, the competitions will be the most challenging for all local residents. I think something we can feel this year as well. But you can be well assured that the Jack Cartons and Peter Bergmans will be out giving it their best, along with the many students that have the talents of making snowmen to sculpturing animals, buildings, or whatever. And the Bergman family apparently was quite well known for their sculptures. And this is actually the third place trophy for the Snowfest sculpture in 1979. So a pretty elaborate trophy for third place, sponsored by the Revelstoke Chamber of Commerce. Another thing that I found very interesting, and it set us down a little bit of another research path, was the mention of the BC Association of Non-Status Indians. And we discovered that they had formed in Revelstoke in 1972. It was local people who were indigenous, but didn't have status. There were a lot of ways then that people could lose status, particularly indigenous women marrying non-indigenous men, they would lose their status. So they actually did have an association here. And for several years, they sponsored a salmon feast as part of the Winter Carnival. This year, the chef was a man named Rudy Leon from Agassiz, and he was bringing salmon with him for the feast that was being held at the Selkirk Hall. Some years they had it outside in the grounds of the King Edward Hotel, which is where the base camp hotel is being built now. In conjunction with the salmon feast, the newly formed Revelstoke Winemakers Guild was having a wine hospitality event in Selkirk Hall as well. They had a big parade and featuring three bands, the Vernon Trumpet Band, Revelstoke Highland Band, and the Golden High School Band. This is a picture would have been taken from the 1976 parade. And that's Dave Williams there, who made this very elaborate float to go into the parade that year. Again, they had the outhouse and smoosh races, Lions Club Fiddlers Contest. Oh, this is Margaret McMahon and her sister Marion Jones. Looks like they're ready to award the trophy. And I'm not sure the year that this photograph was taken. That Old Time Fiddlers Contest. And they had actually a local fellow, Art Davis, who actually often played Santa Claus, had his wife make him a snowman costume, and he became the snowman mascot at all the events, and he would go in the parades and go to all the events dressed as Mr. Snowman. And here he is with a man named Hugh Mulholland, who was Citizen of the Year for 1975. So they continued on with the events each year. This is a 1978 program, 1981. And this was a little badge that they made for the 1982 Snowfest. We actually turned that design into a t-shirt that's available in our gift shop. The snowworm was still around, but he didn't show up on every year. But I saw him as late as 1998 as well. So there he is on the program for Snowfest 1998. You can see the schedule of events there. And they actually had it running from January 31st to February 8th. And by that time, the snow festivals, they were kind of including all of the groups that were doing anything and including them in the snow festival program. So they had a family fun fair sponsored by the Family and Youth Resources and Revelstoke Community Childcare Society. That year they brought in an entertainer called Twiggly Wiggly the Magic Clown, who was a 7-year veteran of the Walt Disney on Ice review and a member of the World Clown Association. So it's actually quite a well-known clown. Again, they had the outhouse races. They did added a new race that year. I don't have any photographs of it, but they did something called a servers race. So they had a waiters race. So they said this is something that they'd was really popular in Banff. So they thought they would try it there. So waiters and waitresses, restaurant servers would take place in this in doing an obstacle course while balancing a tray with a full jug of water. So unfortunately, we don't have photographs of that one. Again, they did a window decorating contest, bowling tournament, free family skate, the Revelstoke Snowmobile Club Snoworama, which I think by that time was being held on Boulder Mountain, hockey game with the Grizzlies versus the Rockies, a family snowman building contest, indoor golf tournament, what they called Silly Olympics. I didn't find out exactly what that involved. Curling bond steels, a ski-a-thon at Mount McPherson at their Nordic Center, outdoor volleyball, snow pitch, again, smoosh races, a dance and casino, and they had a local band called Steel Wheels playing at that, a family toboggan party, family events at Mount Mackenzie. So still lots of things going on during that couple of weeks' time. So it continued on. I didn't get pictures from every year, but this is 2000. In 2004, they had events kicking off at Powder Springs Ski Hill, which is Mount Mackenzie, toboggan party, fireworks, and torchlight parade. They had dummy downhill and Nazi green ski race. Still had the outhouse races, curling, and hockey, but not as big as an event as it had been in the past. In 2005, which is when this photograph is from, they changed the name of the event to Winterlude. And they had a lot of the same events, family toboggan party and fireworks at Powder Springs, a mixed open curling bonspiel, a great snowboard challenge, again, the outhouse races, family fun dance, indoor golf. They included the senior strawberry social in the lineup for the events. They did over the hump ski race, snowshoeing, an invitational Nancy Green ski race, 2-on-2 volleyball tournament, and a snowman building contest. They also had the Zone 2 ski race at Powder Springs and Snoworama on Boulder Mountain. And also included in the program a musician from Vancouver named Rodney DeCrew and the Killers, who were performing at the Revelstoke Visual Arts Center on February 21st. And they also included the Rod and Gun Club banquet on February 28th. So a lot of those things were happening anyway. They just kind of put them on under the umbrella of what they now called Winterlude. There was a little bit of kickback on the name change. There was a letter to the editor from Bob Lepke in the Revelstoke Review, and it was titled Winterlude Snowfest. What's going on? And he said, when did we change the name of the Winter Festival in Revelstoke to the name currently known as Winterlude? I'd always known it as Snowfest, which I had thought adequately describes Revelstoke. When I think of Snowfest, I think of the infamous outhouse races, dances, skiing, snow pitch, and yes, snow. Snowfest is, or was, Revelstoke, but now we have Winterlude. Does Winterlude adequately describe Revelstoke and the activities? I have to wonder. So the last outhouse races, as far as I can tell, were held in 2007. By that time, there was an event on Mackenzie Avenue known as Rail Jam, where skiers skiing or boarders doing tricks on rails. There was no event in 2008, but Rail Jam returned in 2009. And in 2010, there was the start of something called Spirit Fest. And it was really started in conjunction with the Vancouver Winter Olympics. That was sort of the impetus behind trying to revive winter events in Revelstoke. And that was held for 4 years. 2014 appears to be the last year that it happened. But some of the events that they did with that, I think Alex Cooper kind of revived the Tournament of Chump ski event at the resort. They did the Rail Jam at the resort. So there wasn't as much going on downtown at that time. They had snowmobile drag races. They had something that I enjoyed called the Chili Throwdown. So they had all the different restaurants having chili offerings, and you could vote for your favorite. And I believe so in Pam's Kitchen, they won that at least a couple of the years that they did it. One of the events that they did a couple of years was called the Top Blokes competition, sponsored by the Last Drop, where men would compete to see who was the top bloke. And we decided that the museum to sort of take that on and do our own little event that we called the Top Gentleman. So we posted pictures of some early Revelstoke residents and got people to vote on their favorite of those. But that was us piggybacking on their top gents. But it appears that 2014, that's the last sort of formal event that I could find. If anyone can find anything different, I'd like to know. But going through all the papers, that was the last one that I was able to find. They did also have an event called the Carousel of Nations that went from 2010 to 2018. And sometimes it was included in the Spirit Fest events as well. That was a really lovely event celebrating diversity and multiculturalism. It was a huge event at the community center that involved lots of entertainers, lots of booths from different groups, lots of really wonderful food. But the Revelstoke Multicultural Society folded in 1918 and didn't continue that event after that. So we're very excited that the Winter Carnival is being revived. And I'm going to ask Ali to come up and talk a little bit about what they've got planned for this year.
A little emotional. All right. Yeah, it's been a journey bringing this back. I saw a picture in the paper in, I think, November. It was on Facebook, actually. And it was this snowmobile cruising down Mackenzie, and the laundry list of comments were, "Oh, why don't we do this anymore? This was such a great offering." And I come from a extensive event production management coordinating background, so I'm like, okay, let's bring this back. And I approached the city, Lori, and she was enthusiastic and felt positive. And so, speaking of short notice, I just started this endeavor in December. And so this has been 14-hour days for me, and we don't have a lot of snow. So definitely pivoting, and but I'm so excited because so many organizations reached out to me. I don't have nearly the knowledge, and I'm not from here. I'm 13 years here. I'm from California, and so a lot of organizations came. The first thing I did was come to Kathy and try to get as much history as I could. And I was here for the last version of the Winter Carnival, which was Spirit Fest, when the snowboard event was in the gazebo. So I've tried to do as much research and educate myself as best as possible, and my theme has been to weave past experiences with 2024 experiences. So this is what we have. It's all down at Centennial Park. I chose Centennial Park as a way just to be a little bit more resourceful with bandwidth, time, and energy, and money. Instead of like using funding to bring up snow down to Mackenzie to have the outhouse races or whatever it is like actually save the city from having to dump all the snow in the river and make it look pretty. Is like they just can stockpile it, which they started to do for this event, and now it's nothing. It's a bit of a mud pit if you've been to Centennial Park. So, but my intention is just really my intention was unity. That's like the foundation, was to bring people together of all ages and to have things, free activities, have music that might be enjoyable for all different types of folks. I'm not going to please everybody. I had 4 months to put this together, so we're doing the best we can. Unfortunately, things like snowmobile event is canceled. Snow sculpture is not what we had hoped for. We can't be, these days, there's a lot more rules and regulations, right? So we can't be on the ball diamonds where the snow sculpture was gonna be because we don't wanna ruin the grass. But we're promoting people doing it at their houses and places where it won't ruin irrigation. So I encourage everybody to, the website is going to be the most current of like schedule of events. If you don't have access to a website, maybe somebody can help you to come down. We'll have lots of volunteers to be able to assist people and share what's going on and things like that. So yeah, this is just a true labor of love for me, and really wanting to revive and bring this event back. I think it means a lot to the for the folks who have been here throughout the years, and to educate the newer folks who have no connection or idea of what used to happen. So I'm pretty excited. I've put a lot of work, and I have Nicole here helping me, which I'm really thankful for. Is there any questions? Okay, looking for volunteers too.
Thanks, Ellie. So just to wrap up here, it's upcoming on February 23rd, where Film Friday, we're at 2 o'clock, we're showing Revelstoke, A Kiss in the Wind. We've shown before, just a lovely film. This Italian filmmaker who came here to track the story of his great grandfather who died here in 1915 in the building of the Connaught Tunnel. And then on the next Brown Bag History in 2 weeks on the 125th anniversary of Revelstoke. So thank you very much for coming today.